Start recording. Okay. So, it sounds like the air conditioners came back on too. That's good. Quickly, we're going to look at this, where we are today. I just like doing this periodically. Today is October 1st. We're on Retopo. We kind of covered that just a little bit last class period. So we're kind of just sort of shuffling the box modeling, sculpting, photogrammetry, Retopo. We're kind of shoving those into these 3 days, willy-nilly, wherever it makes sense to talk about those. Again, I'm kind of showing you these tools are there, showing you some basics of how to use them, letting you know that this class requires a lot of outside of class work to get stuff done. I'm hoping that this will alleviate some of the modeling stress on you. Now, the thing we're going to cover today is sculpting in Mudbox, because Mudbox is the easiest to get into and do some stuff in. If you're already comfortable in ZBrush, that's fine, use ZBrush instead. If you are really curious about sculpting and want to do more sculpting in the future, I would encourage you to spend a little time researching ZBrush.
So I have a question. I actually model all my jets as like one piece. How would I do it to separate the wings so the flaps can go up and down and stuff? So I could
so there's a couple different ways. Like for me, one of the things I usually do is if I need a part of that model to be separate, you can go through and you can select the edges and then you can select the faces you want to be separate and then detach them, and then it'll break that part off. You could also just duplicate the entire model, delete all of the parts you want on one model and the other parts on the other model. Like that's another way of doing it. But probably the detach is the cleanest way if it's a really complicated model. And I think that is under. Let me see if this is what you're talking about. So let's say I have. So I have this, and I want to detach this part of the wing. I think I can just go in here into these faces and go to mesh. Is it detach or separate? It's not separate. Separate is if it's different objects. So it's under edit, mesh, detach. Yeah. And so you'll notice in the outliner now, I think, a different object. It still has it as two objects though, and so then if I go to mesh and separate, it will break them into two objects. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, if you're wanting to sculpt, we'll get into this in a minute, but I will say Mudbox is, in my opinion, not the best sculpting tool. It's the easiest sculpting tool to pick up and start getting some stuff out of, right? It also plays really well with Maya. And there's a couple of new things in there with the tessellation that I think makes it pretty decent. But that's just some information on that. Doesn't mean you have to do any sculpting in this class. This is just some options we're going out there. The other thing we're going to cover today is photogrammetry, which is pretty much modeling from photos, but not the way you're thinking. Like we take a whole bunch of pictures of stuff and using Recap or Recap 360, we can use those folders to make a model. It has just as many problems as it has like successes, but I can show you some examples where I think it works pretty well. And as long as you're being sort of thoughtful about how you're going about it, you can sometimes get some good results out of it. Or at least a good starting point. I think the problem comes when you think it's going to be the end-all be-all. I'm going to take a bunch of pictures of this room and then I'll have a full model of this whole room. Nah, it's not how that's going to work. It is really good for if you have aerial photography of stuff, to be able to do like terrain and stuff like that. And it's good with non-glossy single objects that are not lots of complex interwoven angles. Right? So we're going to do that, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about retopology again. I kind of feel like we did a pretty decent overview of that, but I want to show you sort of the process of going from form into that flow and function step. So before we jump into any of that, couple of house-cleaning things. There's the schedule. Kind of keep up with that. Keep up with your own schedule. How many of you have at least 2 or 3 models done? Cool, awesome. So you're making progress on this. I know that the hard part about this is where I'm not constantly demanding to see something like every day. It's very easy to postpone that for the squeakier classes where people are demanding, oh, this has to be done now. This history paper, is due tomorrow. It's very easy to postpone this, and that makes the end of your semester really tough, right? So I try not to do that. Try to work on this a little bit every day. A couple of upcoming things I've already kind of mentioned, but I'll mention them again. Midpoint review is coming out the week before. Midterm portfolio review. Whew. Midpoint review is a different thing. Midpoint review is that thing you've already gone through, except you. You're going through now, right? Okay. So you've already done that. Everybody tell them it gets better, right? It's just muscle through. So midterm portfolio review is the halfway point for the last class, right? Your last class here is portfolio. Is anybody in portfolio in this class? Sometimes we have some. It's the midterm presentations for that. So it's basically the early presentation that people in portfolio give of their work to sort of say, how am I doing? And we give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'm going to encourage you to go to that and give you extra credit if you do. So if you go to the midterm portfolio reviews, I need a selfie or a short paragraph sort of summarizing what you saw. I'm kind of taking a risk on the selfie, I literally had a guy pass me as I was going into the portfolio reviews. They hadn't started yet. He passed me on the way out, and he's like, "Is this selfie all you need?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'll work." And he just laughed. And I was like, "So we're gonna try it one more time on the honor system. If you walk all the way over there and take a selfie, just hang out for an hour and see if you get anything."
It's really interesting too. We went to it last semester. It's really cool.
I think it's really cool because you get to see both the best and the worst presentations. And so you get to decide which of those you want to be when you get in that class.
Lots of notes.
And lots of notes on what not to do. And so if you do that, I'll give you some extra credit. I'm gonna have to kind of look at how the extra credit affects the different grades. Yeah. Get a selfie of
I just took a picture behind your back.
Yeah, that's fine. And then I get to see what what my back looks like to the whole class. And I'm like, oh goodness, I shouldn't have worn that shirt. Horizontal stripes are not doing me any favors. So more than likely, what it will be is some of you may have noticed I've set up the rubrics in D2L. That way I can get the grading done. The grades will start popping in there very quickly over the next couple of days because getting the rubrics was kind of my holdup. I've done all my grading for the principals class, and I'm going to kind of work up to this one. This one really only have, 3 things that we've turned in? So the other thing that is important, so anyway, probably what will happen is for each of those recordable elements, it's 1 of 5 points. And more than likely what the extra credit will be is at the end of the semester, I'll go back into one of those rubrics, and whichever one of those numbers you're kind of down on, I'll bump you up 1 number, which would probably equal out in most cases to 5 points or something like that, somewhere probably 2 to 5 points on each project. That is the difference between passing and failing a class. The other thing I'll point out, exercise 3 milestone check-in is next class period, which is a portion of your modeling done. If we want to go back and look at what our document says that means, our milestones, exercise 3, you've already met, exercise, is it the exercise 2 one? Yeah, is that where we're at? So that's 2, not 3, right? Is modeling progress, any animatic revisions you've done to clarify your story, and we're going to review your schedule and asset list. And that just means like, how are you doing? Again, these will be pretty much one-on-one meetings. I'll bounce around with you either that day or if we run out of time the next day. Next class period, we're going over substance, which is either going to be awesome or terrible. Like I'm hoping awesome. I usually am hoping for awesome. So one more thing I want to talk about. You probably all have seen the flyer. Well, kind of 2 more. Yeah, it's really you. We'll just do 1, but we'll kind of combine it. Probably already seen the flyers for this, right? Hanging up everywhere. Recent graduate of here, Matt Drury, is currently working at Rooster Teeth, and he's going to be doing a Skype chat with us on Thursday night, 8:15. So come on out to that. It's part of the Edge Club's industry speakers. We have a handful of other people who are coming, and I've already told you about this. Michelle Maynard from Oxide Games, she's a designer. One of the animators for Bethesda, I actually talked to him on the phone the other day. He's really excited about chatting with y'all. He's one of the animators for Dogmeat and several other things. And he actually just finished working on Fallout 78? Is it 76, yeah. So I think there's gonna be some great talks. Kind of keep your eye on these. Something you probably haven't gotten an email about, but hopefully will soon, is the very next day, an animator from The Simpsons is going to be here in the building. I think he's an animation director from The Simpsons is going to be in the building. He's actually visiting the art department, and he's going to be in one of the rooms doing a demo using the Cintiqs. And so that's something you can take advantage of. Swing by and check that out. It should be a lot of fun. So, okay, any questions, comments on any of that? I'll get you a little bit more information about the midpoint review as we get closer. Little bits at a time, we'll get stuff like who's going to be presenting which nights and that sort of stuff. And once we know that, like you can kind of plan accordingly if you're wanting to see more animators. I will say almost half of the class is animators this semester. So, if you have a question, Amy? I will, but the short answer is going to be the Tuesday and Thursday before fall break. It'll be like 5:15 that night. It'll actually be over in the Millennium Center, but we'll hang up some flyers around the building to say which room it's in. I don't know if they've figured that out yet or if they've scheduled that yet, but it'll be in one of the rooms over in the Millennium Center, so not in this building, in that part of the building over there. Yeah, I definitely encourage you to come to those. They're very helpful. So. Okay, any other questions on any of this? All right. One of the questions we do sometimes get on the midpoint review or midterm portfolio reviews is, what if you can't make it till like 6 or 7 or whatever? It's all right. You can wander in late. People come in and out throughout the whole thing. Just try to be courteous. Huh? Yeah. Well, usually people will sort of sneak in the back door, and that way you don't really notice it. But you probably don't want to kick the door open and be like, "I'm here," or maybe you do. I don't know. That's how to be remembered. It is definitely how to be remembered. Okay. So 3 things we want to go over today. A little bit about sculpting. I want to show you Mudbox. I already have it open, but I'm going to start from the beginning just by closing it down. And you can type in MUD. It's usually the only software package that starts with the word mud. And this will open it up. Now, it's going to ask you the first time you open it, do you want to use Maya shortcut keys or Mudbox's shortcut keys? You can use Maya, and that's fine. I honestly can't tell a difference. Like whichever one I choose, they kind of stay mostly the same. There's a few extras. I think W is wireframe. But like there's a couple of different things in there. You can choose Maya, and it's very easy to go back and forth. What you're going to get, if you have any license issues, this is just something I noticed. Like if it tells you it can't open it because of something with a license server, try opening Maya first, and then open Mudbox and see if that works. Mudbox is also something you can use at home. There's like a free version of that. So, if you need a Cintiq pen for this, I am currently out, but if there's a lot of people who are needing them, I can check them out, or check a few more out from Jonathan to get for you. Just let me know. The other thing I would say is you don't necessarily have to use one. It does make it a little easier. And if for some reason like you're needing one in a hurry and like before I get a chance to them, you could probably get one from Jonathan, but I don't really want him to have to be the Cintiq pen master. So just let me know if it's something you're needing. I can grab a few. I know a couple people have already gotten some from me. I checked out a really small number. But today I'm going to be doing the demo just with my mouse. The only real difference you get with that is you get pressure sensitivity on how hard you're pushing on the screen. But I can't really sculpt in here without doing a lot of screen switching stuff anyway. So I'm just going to show you with my mouse. If I open up a cube, so it just gives me a mesh to start with, right? All of these tools down here, we can kind of resize this, right? Under our sculpt tools, these are just tools we can use to start sculpting around on this, right? So I'm going to grab my grab tool. You'll see by default, if I just grab over here and move, right, this is just going to smear stuff. If I grab my sculpt tool and sculpt, hold on, turn something off. Thought I had it turned off on all of them. This is where I was messing around earlier. Start sculpting. You're going to see I want to start adding to this. Right? So if I'm just clicking, I'm like adding to this volume here, and I'm able to start getting a little bit more organic shapes. Right? If I hold down Shift while in any of these tools, it will smooth it or relax it. So you're getting like a little bit more of this like evening it out. Right? And so what a lot of people will do is they'll pull a bunch of stuff up, they'll relax it a little bit, pull a bunch of stuff up, relax it a little bit. Right? Now, the grab tool, again, it's going to work very similar. I can just grab sections, pull it up. I want to show you back in this sculpt tool, if I hold down Control, it will do the opposite, right? So if I'm sculpting, it's pulling it up, right? If I hold down Control, it starts pushing it down, right? And so I can start carving into this object too. So you can, again, I just use the default shortcut keys, but in Maya and in Mudbox, if you just hold down B, you'll see that I get this little line. So if you hold down B and click, you can sort of change it there. Just regular click, left click, yeah. Now you'll also be able to do a lot of that with over here in your, below your layers, there's this, this option for size for your brush and strength, right? So if you're wanting your brush to affect it less, like if that's too much or not enough, you can crank that up to 30 and get a little bit of a bigger line, right? So, I would, in all honesty, I would advise you to keep it kind of conservative, right? New scene, because like it's easy to make too big of a change. So I'm going to go back and grab a sphere this time and show you a couple of things. Let's say I wanted to start trying to turn this into a character, right? I know, it's just a sphere. I'm going to use my grab tool, okay? And if I grab here for an arm, make my brush really big, let's say I want to think of this as the torso and want to pull an arm out of here, right? Well, one thing I get out of this is, let's make that a little smaller. One thing I get out of this is I'm just manipulating one side of it, right? And so if I want to be able to do this with some symmetry, with whichever tool I'm using, I can turn this mirror to either X, Y, or Z, right? I want to do it to X, and that means whatever I do to this side, I'll do to the other side. Maya also has this as well, and it's working better. But there's a little bit of a problem with this. Let's say I pull out some arms here. Look at that, I got some arms. For me, I'm using the Mudbox shortcut keys, so W will let you see your wireframe. But look here, like this is the end of the hand now. So how do I start getting some fingers out of there, right? Like it's really kind of not an intuitive way of getting that, right? So this is relatively new in Mudbox. There's a version of this in ZBrush as well. It's called tessellation. So in each of your tools, there's this option down here for tessellation. And if I click on tessellate, right there, now what happens is when I grab this, and it's going to give me this error. I'm like, that's all right. When I grab it, you see how it meshed it a little bit more? It made it all triangles. And then if I start pulling from here, it's like dynamically updating the amount of resolution in there. Okay? And so I can very quickly start getting a little bit more of what I would want out of a character shape. Right? Not perfect. I understand that. And you're seeing that it's adding mesh to it. Right? And then I can sort of reform that mesh. Now I can also do this with the Sculpt tool, right? I can go down here and choose Tessellate. And as I start adding more mesh to the head, right here, it should start adding more triangles to it as well, right? Now this is a terrible way to start. Yeah, it's Patrick from it is, right? So I just kind of showing you that like this is ways you can start manipulating this. I honestly would probably start from the head first and then go down the neck. But whatever, I'm this far in so far. I'm just going to start pushing stuff around. And what you're seeing is that it's both adding tessellation when I need it, and that way I can just keep pulling from here, right? Now, depending on, this probably would work a little bit better with a brush right now, or with a pen right now. Bless you. So one of the things I want you to notice is how much detail this will get, right? If I go down here to B, move this to here, start pulling these out, right? I'll start being able to get like fingers out of this thing. Now again, that's some messy fingers. See, I model. Yep. Now, if like fighting with the tool, obviously, the grab brush is probably not going to be your best way of doing that. I would probably use bulge, and then turn on tessellate on that. And what bulge is going to do is it's going to allow you to start building up regions you want to have more of that information. Actually, I'm doing this wrong, and just as a point of principle, I'm going to fix that, which is you want your thumb pointing forward, not up. So sort of smooth that out, right? And so little bits at a time, you can start adding the mesh you need to. Remember, the hard part about this is you need to turn on tessellation for each of these. So if I decide I'm going to go to flatten here, to flatten the palm of that hand, I need to make sure tessellation is turned on, or tessellate is turned on that too. And so now I can, is that working? Go in here and kind of flatten out the palm of the hand a little bit. So, again, I know this is as of right now, what I'm showing you is not looking the best in the world yet. This is all about like time. Like you got to kind of, the cool thing about this, the reason I like this is because with this tool, you don't have to worry about topology at all. In fact, you shouldn't be even thinking about topology at all. You should be thinking about this object and how it looks, right? And so little bits at a time. Get my little third finger out here. It's a little bit bigger. Let's do that. So little bits at a time, you're going to be able to start sculpting the shapes you want. Right? I know this is not the shape I want, but let's grab this. Okay. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is that this is me just working in the first level of subdivision. I usually get my character's form sort of blocked out the best I can very early on, right? And so think of the bigger forms first, right? Shoulders, start thinking of spine here, right? Oops. Just broke a spine. Sort of getting that bend in the back, right? But all I'm thinking about is form, not my topology at all, okay? So, C to kind of push that in a little bit, make that a little smaller, Control, kind of push that in, smooth it out. I'm not thinking any at all about the topology, I'm just thinking about getting the right shape. Because what we're going to do after this is take this back into Maya and get the right topology. After you start getting a rough shape here that you like you get the, let's say we blocked out this base mesh here, right? And I want to start putting in a little bit more detail. I can go in from there and relax. I can go in from there and start smoothing this. So if I hit W, you'll see that this is the resolution I have. And the reason tessellation is cool is because it is not resulting in this enormous number of polygons, right? So if I go to mesh and then subdivide or add new subdivision, now I'm up to 27,000 faces, right? And so this is where I can start adding in more detail, right? We get stuff like our, the foamy brush is kind of neat. We can add some tessellation to that. And this is going to paint it as if you're like spraying foam onto it. Right? And then we also have this knife right here. There's that knife. And knife is going to allow you to cut into your model. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit of a sharper cut, right? So like maybe we can use that to start getting parts of the model. Now, no, this is rough. I'm just blocking out very big shapes to start working with later. So push that in, push this in, foam that up. Also look at reference. And so like, I know, again, it's very rough, but little bits at a time, we're going to start pulling elements in until we start getting something that feels a little bit more like the shape. What I would say is don't get too detailed too quick, right? Like really right now, I'm really trying to focus in on, I'm getting rid of that mouth, that just bothers me. I'm really trying to focus in on these masses and getting the shape that I need in those masses as soon as possible. So like, where's the skull at? Where's the rib cage at? Where's the clavicle at, right? Like, do I need to add in some clavicle information in here? And then start to refine from there, okay? So here I can sort of start taking away some mass around the neck. And just little bits at a time. Start getting the shape we want. Now I know this is way off. But part of our point here is to get as much of this blocked out as we can, and then little bits at a time start adding in detail. And using the tessellation tool, you can start getting masses pretty quickly. Now that doesn't mean that that's how you have to start, right? Let's say you have a very simple mesh you want to start with. Let's go File, New Scene, don't save, close. Let's go into Maya. Let's say you already have kind of roughed out your character model, right? No, let's not do that. I'm just going to make up something. We'll just send this guy here, right? Maybe. So let's say this is the object, you've already modeled it, but let's say instead it was actually a quick version of your character and you're just wanting to add more detail to that. We got File, and this Send to Mudbox is a nice way of going back and forth. So I'm going to send as new scene. It's going to connect it to Mudbox. I'm going to say keyball. And so we automatically get this mesh and Mudbox, and then I can start sort of sculpting on this to get whatever extra detail I need on it, right? So you can sort of work out your base shape in Maya and then send that to Mudbox to get some extra detail in there, okay? Whenever you're done with this, right, we can send that back to Maya. Now I do want to show you, I want to do a new scene here. There are sort of base human characters in here, and you can start with this if you need to. And you can also warp this pretty dramatically, right? However you need to do that. Again, the grab tool is neat. You just need to make it really big to get sort of what you're wanting to know. Okay. Right. So we can really start to adjust this character pretty quickly. So you can do a lot to this. I guess what I'm doing is saying play with it, right? Like do what you want to with it. This is also a way if you want to add detail to it. Let's say you've got sort of a roughed out version of your model already. Kicking this into Mudbox, you may be able to sort of work with the topology however or work with the form however you want to. So again, I break up modeling, form, flow, and function. All we're thinking about inside of Mudbox is form, okay? Don't worry about flow, don't worry about function, because we're destroying this mesh. Okay, this mesh is unusable now, okay? And that's cool, because we weren't going to use it anyway. Let's say we go in here, and we have tessellate on. So let's go ahead and give him some horns. Kind of pull those out a little bit. I think I'm doing this too small of a brush. Just want to fatten them up a little bit. Okay, so now this topology is not very usable, right? Even if we have a little bit of a stronger, step down too much. One. There we go. So we start to get like a little bit more of a shape here, even more detail here. Let's say we really started like developing that. Developing that a little bit more. Right. So we have the shapes. Let's even smooth it a little bit more, just so we get that. Mesh, add new subdivision level. Mesh, add new subdivision level. Right. Oh goodness. So let's say this is the model you're wanting to take into Maya to get a little bit more detail on it. Obviously, or to get a little bit more usable mesh. Obviously, though, this topology, like that's just not usable for deformation. Okay, there's like all sorts of weird edge flow in there. So I'm going to go File, Send to Maya, Send selected as new scene. Okay. Let's send mesh at current level, see how that does. I don't think it's ridiculously huge. Okay, here we go. Well, he's tall. So here's our mesh. Again, like that's just not deformable, right? If I were to go in here with our soft select tool, like to see how this would deform, like we're going to get all sorts of weird stretching in the mesh. Like this is just not the topology you would want, right? So what we need is cleaner topology on this. How I'm going to do that is with that quad draw tool I showed you earlier, right? So again, select this mesh. We're going to click this little magnet to make that body live, right? And then I'm going to turn on symmetry on object X to see if that works. I'm not 100% sure it will work great with this, but hopefully it will. And then quad draw, I'm just going to go in here and start drawing on this object. And you see it kind of works. And if I get really close to the center, it snaps, right? You all see those dots I'm drawing? And so now I can start creating topology that makes sense for my model, right? Like this. Let's say maybe for my mouth, I need sort of these concentric rings that go around it. And move this up. With my eyes, I kind of need the same thing, but I can start adding these rings, start getting all of this detail I'll need in the mouth. Right? I can sort of pull it out. If I hold down, if I click B, I can have like a soft select, and then I can middle click areas and kind of smear them out. And if I turn off B, I think it's Alt. Well, no. Let's see. I have to remember what this is. Shift. No. Yeah. So Control Shift will allow me to delete an edge I don't like. And then I thought. Let me look this up. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of quad draw hotkeys. So there's drag a dot, tweak components as your middle click. You can also insert an edge loop, but there's a way to Yeah, extend an edge loop, tab, that's what it was, tab drag. So if I grab this edge and hold down tab, I can start extruding along this edge too, right? So I can very quickly start sort of building the way I want my edges to flow. So you can see, like, sort of the benefit of this is, like, now I'm not worrying about form at all. I'm just worrying about flow and function, right? The same with the eyes. I can go in here, kind of quickly get me a ring that goes around here, start inserting edge loops and manipulating that. And then I can even start connecting these down to here, right? For whatever topology reasons I need. That's actually probably not one I want. I probably don't want that. So the way to figure out how you want your topology to flow, I would use reference. If you just search topology. Model topology. You're going to find all sorts of great examples. You're going to find some bad ones too, but you're going to see sort of what other people have done for topology to get some relatively decent results, right? Now the cool thing about this, once it's all done, I have this object, turn that off. Yeah. Right. So I get this mesh, and I can delete that one if I need to, and start actually getting a smoother, like lower res, more easily deformable version of it. Yes?
So, since most of us are going to be having how do you do the inside of the mouth? Because whenever you're sculpting it, you normally just do the lips or maybe some teeth and nose, but you don't do anything like the inside of the mouth. You have to sit.
That's a good question. So the inside of the mouth is, I probably wouldn't, at least not in your sculpt. Probably what I would do is I would go all the way to the lip opening, and then just, once you have your final mesh, extrude it into your mouth bag. Usually the way I model characters is with a sort of like this tube that goes down their throat, and I make the opening where their inside of the mouth is a little bit bigger. And that way you can have that sort of as an open tube, and you don't have to really truncate that so it doesn't look like the throat is cut off or anything like that. So I usually, like, you can sculpt that. That's awfully, like, frustrating to get all that in there. If you do, probably what I would do is I would model your character with their mouth open just a little bit, like really like faintly open. A lot of modeling rules that I would sort of say, there's the argument between the A pose and the T pose. I really kind of like the A pose where your character is sort of slightly lowered arms. The only really reason to put their arms out is so it's easier to skin all of this up underneath here. I like to skin my characters or have my characters modeled in a moderately casual pose, right? And that way it doesn't take too much work to get them into an actual casual pose. So if they're out here in the T pose, then they have to put their arms all the way down, and then their shoulders look like this, right? And you have to put their shoulders down, and then it still looks awkward. If you just have them a little bit more relaxed, that helps. The other thing, your thumb does not come out of the side of your hand. It kind of comes out at an angle. You kind of see that? And so when you extrude that out on the side, if you need to wrap your thumb around for a fist, that makes it really complicated. There's a lot of modeling things to focus on. That's one of the reasons I try to reduce the amount of modeling required for this class as much as possible with some of the project choices. Hopefully you all are finding ways to not have to spend tons and tons of time modeling, and we can get to the animation pretty quickly. So, one of those was to pick a style that doesn't require as intensive of modeling. So the other thing, some of you though, maybe just like the project you have in mind just requires some photorealistic model, right? So that's the other thing I wanted to look at today. I mean, one, you can just practice sculpting until you get really good at it. The other thing is a program on here called Recap. So if you actually just type in Recap in here, it's Autodesk Recap. Looks like this. You have to kind of sign up for an account, and most of you probably already have this because you have a free educational license of like Maya or something like that. Once you have, you'll get something like this. Now, I've been using this for a little while, so I have a handful of different projects, right? Can I refresh this? Refresh that. Yeah. Okay. So you'll see all of these different models that are popping up down here. These are past projects that I've done. This is my dad over there. Matt Drury, we were talking about a minute ago, who's going to come and visit. That's him. So how Recap works, I'll show you this from the network, is you take a whole bunch of pictures of stuff. So for example, let's do St. Francis here. I took a whole bunch of pictures of my mother-in-law's St. Francis statue, kind of on a St. Francis kick right now. I think he's really interesting. And so I took pictures all the way around him from multiple angles. I don't know that this was my best set that I used. Right? Seeing some stuff I'm getting there with my shadows in it. Ideally, this works best if you're taking it in a sort of a neutral lighting, like an overcast day is a good time to do it, where you don't have a lot of strong directional lighting. This one is going to, because what we're going to get out of this is going to also have the shadows in it. And so if you want those shadows permanent, that's cool, but in most cases you want the shadows to be interactive. So we get this, all these different images, right? Recap allows us to upload those to a server online, right? And use like sort of cloud processing to turn that into a model. So I actually have my St. Francis model in here, cancel, and you can see sort of the results that came from that. It's actually pretty decent. Like this is not bad. But as I said earlier, you can see like it has the shadows baked into it, has some of the hot spots baked into it. And if I turn on my wireframe, you'll see it's pretty dense, right? So this is what I'm getting out of this. Completely not usable, right? In terms of animation. Like if I wanted to make St. Francis jump around, he's going to get some weird stretching and stuff like that. So kicking this into Maya and then retopologizing it would be the way of doing that. I'll show you some, like for every success I've had with getting a good photogrammetry, I actually uploaded one right before class. It is currently at 1%. So it takes it a little while to process it. So for every good result I've had, you get some that are just like, there's some issues with it, right? So for example, this one, this is Matt, we were talking about it earlier. The front of it, looking okay. Around here, we get some weird stuff, right? But having said that, like I've also gotten some really good results out of this as well. Some of you will recognize this, and this is from a while back. This is some photogrammetry in my head. And so this worked pretty well to get the mass, right? I can put that on a relatively simple head sculpt if I need to. This is what it looked like after retopology. This is the actual texture that it got from that as well. And so all I really did was bake the texture that is from the photogrammetry onto this. Now, if this is something you are wanting to do, I am drastically oversimplifying it right now. This is not like, ooh, cool, I can get this model in 5 minutes. Like, this takes like a couple of days to get something usable. This is the option you go for if you want something, if you have to have something photorealistic and you happen to have a physical version of the object. We had model-wise, something that worked out really good in one of the previous classes was like a mounted deer head. There's an animation where two deer heads were like arguing with each other. And the photogrammetry of that turned out great. Like, they did a really good job on it. They spent way too much time on that and never actually got any good animation out of that. But otherwise, the models were awesome. So, works best on things that are not glossy, works best on things that are not transparent, like matte surfaces. That's why sculptures work really well. And if this is something you're interested in trying, let me know and I can work through it with you to get a usable model. This is actually the reason I designed the talking sculpture project, was so if you didn't want to do animation, we could do it with a specific sculpture. So. All right. Questions about any of this? Topology, sculpting? All right, cool. I'm going to, at that point, go ahead and shut up and let you work. If you have any questions along the way, I'll hop around, help you work on those. Remember, next class period is when the milestone is due. So double check everything that's due, make sure you have all that stuff. I think modeling, I was very vague. I just said some progress, meaning I want to see some models. The next milestone, though, is 90% of the modeling done. So, huh? Yes, I think so. Let's look at that really quick and make sure. So yeah, right now it's the next exercise, modeling progress, just showing some of it, right? Our next milestone, though, is, so this one is tomorrow, or next class period, the 3rd. It'll be the 17th, which is interesting. That's the Wednesday after fall break. I usually don't like doing that, where I have something due immediately after coming back from fall break. But I also recognize that it's a double-edged sword. Some of you are like, I'm going to the beach, or I'm going to the whatever, going somewhere for fall break. The other half of you are going to be like, I'm going to sit in my dorm and be bored. And so I'm like, well, if you want to use that time to get some stuff done, that's good for that, right? But that milestone is, I think, 90% of modeling done and some texturing. So we will start looking at texture and materials next class period with Substance. Again, I'm not going to go super deep into that. How many of you have used Substance before? All right, it's actually amazing. Freaking love Substance. Yes, Sean?
So for the 3rd milestone, do we need to have anything rigged or anything like that?
No, I think at that point, I'm mainly just wanting to see that you're ready to rig. If you do have stuff rigged, that's awesome. Because pretty much we're rolling right out of that milestone in animation. So I'm kind of staggering those a little bit and kind of teaching concepts before you get to them. That way you can use them when you're done with that part of it. So. But I do think that milestone 4, which we have a little bit of a bigger jump there, that is everything animated at least a little bit. And so at that point you have to have some rigs done. So if you're ready to start rigging, I don't wait on the milestone to do that. Like I can help you get started on that. So. All right, cool. Any other questions? How are you feeling about the progress of this? Like, are you feeling like we're moving along okay?
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and shut up. I'll go ahead and stop this video. I don't know if it's a helpful video. I know that terrible monstrosity of a model I made earlier is not a great example. I really can model, y'all. I don't, but that's not a good example. So. Yes.
Just
For there?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'll go ahead and stop the video and upload that. And any questions you have along the way, let me know.